In this lesson, we'll learn how to create a modular document grid for our brochure. Okay, so in the previous lesson, we finished creating 6 pages here within our document, and then we organized those 6 pages into 2 spreads. So we've got 1 page for each panel of our brochure, and we have an outside and an inside of our brochure. So now you may remember in the last lesson that we also talked about planning for the folds in a brochure. We can't just divide this spread equally into thirds, because if we folded it over after dividing it equally, you're going to get a little bit of a bow in your brochure, because we're not taking it into an account the width of the paper when we fold this inside flap in first. We fold this inside flap in, then we fold this outside flap in, and it's going to create a little bit of a tight fit. So one of these panels needs to be a little bit smaller, and it needs to be that inside flap. Now, with InDesign CS5, we can actually make changes to the size of individual pages in one document, which is a new feature for InDesign. So I tell you what, let's go ahead and just zoom in on this spread here at the top, and let's come over here to our Pages panel again. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about master pages. Now, if you look above the 2 spreads here into this area over that little divider, you can see here we have 2 master pages. We have one for none, and we have an A master. A master is our default master page. So we need to create a second master page because we need 2 different page sizes here. Now, we're going to just go ahead and simply grab this A master page, and I'm going to just drag that down to the New Page button right here. And I'm going to release it right there. And you can see we've created a B master. Now, we could also create new master pages by coming up here to the flyout menu, choosing New Master Page. But either way works. So let's go ahead and create one the way we did, and we're going to come in here now at this point, and we're going to change the size of this second master page. Now remember, all of our pages right now are set to 5.031 inches wide. We actually need to decrease the size of this master page by about 1/16 of an inch. So I'm going to go ahead and reduce this master page to about 4.937 inches. Now, I've done all the math here on paper, so we're not going to go through all that, but I tell you what, let's go ahead and make that adjustment. So I'm going to come over here to the tool panel, and let's go ahead and select this third tool down. This is a new tool. It's called the Page tool. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and I want to come back over here to my master page, and I'm just going to click on the master page. And you can see that it gets highlighted sort of this peach color. And if you come up here to the control panel with me, you can see here we have some controls for the page size. We have an X and Y coordinates, and we have our width and our height of this page. So right now we're set at 5.031 inches. I mentioned we're going to change the width of this page to 4.937 inches. And you can see that change gets reflected after I hit tab there, and we've narrowed this page just a little bit. So that's exactly what I was wanting to do. I'm going to come back over to my selection tool here and just click away to deselect our page. And now we have 2 different sizes of master pages. Now, a master page exists to control the content on the primary pages in your document. If you have something like, say, a page number or a header or a footer that needs to appear on a large number of different pages, it's easier to come up here and create a master page, place that information up here, and then apply that master page to the desired pages in your layout than it is to actually create that information on every single page. Now, we can apply a master page to individual pages within our layout simply by clicking on that master page and dragging it down and dropping it on one of these pages below. So let me go ahead and come in here and select our document. I'm going to come back down, double click on those numbers below spread number 1 here. And if you remember here, this panel on the far left is the one we want to be a narrow panel. Now, we haven't actually applied that page size change to this page as of yet. We've just created a master with the new page size. So I'm going to come up here and click on this B master, and I'm going to drag it down, drop it right here on page number 1, the far left panel in our first spread. Now, you may have noticed that our page size has changed here within our spread, and we've actually created just a little bit of a gap right there where those 2 pages don't fit quite together. Well, that's going to make it a little difficult to design over that fold. So let's just come in here and grab page number 1 here, and I'm just going to move that over here to the end of the spread, then I'm going to move it back. And you can see here, if we come in and select just this far left page, that's our narrow page. And if we come in and select these two pages next to it, there are wider pages. So we've created a little bit more of a narrow page for that inside flap. So I tell you what, I'm going to come down here, and if this is the inside flap on the front cover or the front of our brochure, on the inside of our brochure, that same panel is going to be this one right here. So let's just drag our B master down to this far right panel of our second spread, which is page number 6. So we'll just drop it there, and you can see we didn't run into that same problem. So let's talk about naming our masters appropriately. Now, if you're working with a very large document and you have several different master pages, it's going to be important to be able to keep track of which master page is for which kind of information. So I'm just going to come in here right now, and I'm going to rename this B master. Let's just come in, right-click on that, and I'm going to choose Master Page Options for B master. And you can see here we have a prefix and our master name. So right now it's master. Let's just name this inside panel. And I'm going to leave the rest of these settings alone and hit OK. You can see that name change takes place right here. Alright, now we talked about creating a modular grid for this document. Now, a grid is going to be that underlying structure that gives us something to hang our content on, and the reason I chose a modular grid is really related to the type of project this is. Now, right now I'm going to say the type of client we're designing a brochure for is an interior design company that specializes in contemporary living spaces. So they're very modern, very contemporary. So we're going to use a modular grid, and the advantages to a modular grid is that it provides a high level of order within the content on your spread here. So a modular grid contains both columns and rows, and these provide areas, both modules and spatial zones, to hang information and our data on, whether it be a photograph, an illustration, whether it be text. We can hang all of that on this modular grid. Now, we're actually going to create that. Let's go up here to our A master first. And if you remember in the very first lesson, previously we didn't actually apply margins to our document. We reduced those to 0. Now, if you remember that new document dialog window right in here, we zeroed all these settings out. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel that now. Let's come up here to Layout, choose Margins and Columns, and we get our Margins and Columns dialog. So right now I'm going to go ahead and add a 1/2 inch margin around each of our pages. So let's go ahead and just click that up to where it's a 1/2 inch. And you can see here we have this link button pressed, so it's linking all 4 sides together. And we also have a columns adjustment. Right now we have one page, which is also a panel, and we have it set to 1 column. Let's go ahead and increase that to 3 columns here, and you can see what happens. We defined 3 different columns within our margins here. So I'm going to come in here and just reduce the gutter just a little bit. I'm going to drop that down to about 1/8 of an inch gutter. The gutter is the area between the columns. So we also have an option here for Enable Layout Adjustment. I'm going to leave that alone for right now. We're not going to work with that in this course. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK on that. And we have defined our columns and margins for this one page. Now, remember I mentioned that a modular grid actually includes both columns and rows. We can't create rows using our columns and margins settings, so we're going to have to bring in some guides. Now, if you remember in previous Adobe applications, actually pretty much all Adobe applications, we can drag a guide in just simply by pulling it down from our document rulers. Well, there's actually a lot easier way to place these guides exactly where they need to be without dragging them in and setting them manually. We can come up here to our Layout drop-down and choose Create Guides. And let me go ahead and pull this down. You can see here that we have both rows and column settings here. So I'm going to go ahead and add some rows. Let's go ahead and give this page 4 rows. So click that up a few times, and we're going to set that gutter to be 1/8 of an inch, just like we did with the margins. And let's go ahead and give this some columns as well. We've already defined columns with our margins, but I want to show you something really fast. I'm going to go ahead and give this 3 columns, and I want you to notice that our guides don't match up with the columns we defined in our margins. Now, the reason for this is with this Create Guides dialog, we've actually have it set to align our guides to our page. So essentially we're using our guides to create a modular grid that's ignoring the margins. Now, if we wanted this grid to fit nice and tight within the margins we've defined, we'd actually need to select that little button right there. And you can see here that each of the cells in our modular grid, or each of the modules, are exactly the same size and they're restricted by the margins of our document. So I'm going to go ahead and reduce the gutter size here on the columns back to 1/8 of an inch as well, so that fits nice and tightly there. And we're going to leave this box alone. This is to remove existing ruler guides if we had already defined any of those. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK on this. Alright, so we have defined a modular grid on our first master page. I tell you what, let's come in here and take a look at our B master page though. We haven't defined any margins and columns or guides for this B master page. So I tell you what, we walked through this once already. Let me just go ahead and do the exact same thing over on our B master page, setting the 1/2 inch margins, and we're going to set the columns to 3, just like that. And then I'm going to come in and create those same guides we had as before. So I'm going to reduce those gutter sizes, bump the columns to 3, rows to 4, fitting our guides to our margins, and we'll hit OK. So we defined a modular grid for each of our possible master pages. So I'm going to come down here and just double click on this first spread here. And we know here that this is our smaller page, and it's feeding off of the information we've defined on the B inside panel master page. These other two pages are defined by the A master. So coming down here on our second spread, these first two pages are defined by the A master. This third page is defined by the B master. Alright, I know I moved pretty quickly through that, but this document is ready to begin bringing in content. So in the next lesson, we're going to pick up where we're leaving off here, and we're going to learn how to save this document as a template.